Is God responsible for evil and suffering? No doubt about it, this world is full of evil. This world is full of hurt, pain, and suffering. Bad stuff happens to people. So where is God? Does evil mean that God doesn't exist? Or worse, is God the author of all this bad stuff? Well, Jesus answers these questions with these statements found in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, beginning in verse 10, when Jesus says that the thief is the one who comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But then Jesus continues and he says, but I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. So, who is the author of the robbing, killing, and destroying? Is it God? No, it's the devil. God is the author of the opposite. God is here bringing fullness of life. God came to heal, to restore, to make all things new. This is his will. This is his mission, and this is his desire for us. This is what brings him glory, not death and sin, but life. So let's be clear. God isn't the cause of your pain, of your sickness, or your loved one's death. This wasn't and isn't his plan or his doing. But does God care when we suffer? Does God care when people suffer? Well, Jesus continues right here in John 10, and he reveals where God is when evil is happening. John 10, verse 11 says that I am the good shepherd. This is Jesus speaking. I'm the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Wow. So not only is God not the author of the evil, of the robbing, the killing, and destroying, but God actually steps down from heaven in the midst of the pain and the suffering. Jesus puts on flesh, places himself in the middle of the suffering, identifies with us in that way, and then he takes upon himself the suffering and the sin of the entire world. Why? Why does he do this? In order to make a way for mankind, for us, to find eternal freedom from the effects of sin and death. So God demonstrates that not only is he aware of our suffering, but he cares so much that he would place himself in that suffering and place upon himself the very suffering that we endure. And then he makes a way out. He makes a way out. Yet some people, even many Christians, still blame God for evil. We need to remind ourselves where evil, where death, sickness, and pain, where they come from. And Romans chapter 5, verse 12 is clear. It says, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way, death came to all people because all sinned. So where does this death, this evil, this brokenness, pain, and suffering come from? It comes from man's rebellion, original sin and ongoing sin of mankind, from our rebellion, from our sinful choices. That's what causes the death and the suffering in our world. In fact, when we read Genesis right there in the beginning, we discover that God created a universe without death, without suffering, without loneliness, without pain. Look, God never intended for us to taste these things. We were created for life. We were not created for death. That's why death feels so wrong. Death causes us to actually weep. And the death of a loved one causes even Jesus to weep. Remember the shortest verse, yet one of the most profound verses in the entire Bible simply says, Jesus wept. That's also in the Gospel of John, chapter 11, verse 35. Look, a theology that makes God the author of sin and death, it's a heinous, dangerous, and unbiblical theology. It denigrates the very nature of God, of God's goodness and his love. It causes people to blame God for the sin of man, and it can drive people away from the very one that's reaching out his hands to comfort and to rescue them. And finally, here is the conclusion of God's redemptive plans, his plans that finally and totally remove evil and suffering for all eternity, his plans that lovingly redeem us from the mess that our sin created. Here it is in Scripture. It says in Revelation 21, and I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. Now check this out, verse 4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I'm making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Man, that's some good news from Revelation 21. So let's make sure that we don't blame God. And let's also make sure that we don't run from God because of the pain and the suffering that we experience in life. Instead, let's run to him. Run to the one who is and who was and who has done the hard and the sacrificial work to make all things new.